record the cloud. Okay, it's an honor to have you on, Miss Lora King. And let me just read a little bit about you before we proceed with this interview.
Sure, go.
Lora King is the executive director and founder of the Rodney King Foundation. And she says, living by the echo of my father's profound words, can we all get along? And this is how she has been operating on a mission to repair the world. Her priority for the foundation is to promote and enhance community self-esteem, health, social services, and social justice locally and worldwide. You know what? I'm just going to make sure that I have everyone muted. Let me see.
Sure.
That should pick that up. You should be getting.
And then Laura, you can just unmute yourself, please. And so, like I was saying, her priority for the foundation is to promote and enhance community self-esteem, health, social services, and social justice locally and worldwide. And she provides services for the homeless and youth. She also wants to increase the self-esteem and create workshops and leadership camps and by providing resources and also mental health support. So Laura, I'm not going to go any further. I just want to again thank you for being on. It is truly, truly an honor to have you.
No, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Yes, yes. You know, I know that this week is a very historic week. Um, it's something I was reading a little bit about um, what people have said about the video of your dad and what happened on March 3rd, all the way back in 1991. And even Reverend Al Sharpton called that the video, the Jackie Robinson of videos, you know, the first that actually revealed um, you know, some of the brutality. Now, let me say this, Laura, before we begin, and this is for everyone that are on our calls. When we are talking and bringing things to the forefront here for Partnering for a Better Tomorrow, it's not to bash, it is not to create havoc, it is to empower and to educate and to bring about awareness. And Laura, when I was reading about what Reverend Al Sharpton said about the video, something came to mind, even as far as my father. I'm 62 now. And I remember one trip where we were headed to Oklahoma and we were pulled over by the police. I was a very young girl and they were wondering where we were going. And you know, where are you going, boy? And who's this you have in the car? And thank God that my father didn't experience any real brutality, but we all know that situations like that have happened. It's
Right.
horrible that it happened with your father, but it is I'm grateful, and so many of us are grateful that something like that was finally captured on tape, just so that we all are more aware, but
Sure.
also to help start to curtail, even though we've had what's been going on already, even most recently in 2020. So one of my questions to you before we move forward is, how old were you at the time that that happened on March 3rd, 91?
I was 7 years old.
Wow. Wow. And you have other brothers and sisters, right?
I do. Actually, I have no brother. I
Okay.
have an older sister. My dad had 3 kids. I'm the middle child. Yay. I have an older sister, she's 9, and I have a younger sister. She's 29. No, she's 27. I'm sorry. So 27, 37, 27, 37, and 39. Mm-hmm. No
Okay.
boys. No
Okay.
boys. Mhm.
Okay. So I'd like to kind of do this in like chronological order, what happened then and where we're going now and what your accomplishments have been. So you
Sure.
were very young at the time. So when this happened, I know that you probably didn't understand everything, but we watched it on the news. There was a lot of anger, obviously, because of the LA riots and all of that. But what was going on within the family structure? How were you feeling even as a young child when that happened?
You know what's crazy? This was something that myself and the whole entire world has never seen before. So it was a mix of emotions for the simple fact that initially I didn't know that that was my father. I was playing in the living room, and I just so happened to read the caption of the name, and I was like, oh, he has the same name as my dad. No big deal, you know. So then, but I thought to myself, whoever this man is, there's no way possible that he could live through something like this. Like, I just knew for a fact that whoever he
Right.
was, you know. And then I started to notice my family's reaction, and I put two and two together and realized that that was my father. And so I can't even describe, like the feeling, because I was young, but I remember that time vividly. And
Mm.
it's something that no child, let alone adult, no one in life should go through that. But I would say it really destroyed our family, because we all felt that, you know, in every way possible except for the physical. So every emotion possible that you can feel from that, we all felt that except for the physical, because my dad was never the same. Even though he didn't die that night, thank God for his grace, he didn't die, but a huge part of him died that night that never came back. You know, he was a
Mm.
completely different person, emotionally, physically, every way. He was a different person. You know, he tried to cope, but of course, you know, I ask the question often when someone has something to say, who is normal after that? You know, we see Black men walking the streets, everybody walking the streets, and they look like they're unstable mentally. But can you imagine how many Rodney Kings there are without that videotape? I ask myself often. So before I judge someone walking down the street looking like they've lost their mind, I think to myself often, did this happen to them? And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the reasons. And I'm not justifying my father running. He should not have run. He was wrong for that. However, he ran because this happens all the time, and he's seen it. And people, you know, they're arrested, they're taken up. In Altadena, they would do that. They would take African American men up on the hill, and they would never be seen again, or they would be brought back down, and they never come back the same. So he ran to a lit area thinking that hopefully someone could call for help or something, not knowing that God's grace, they videotaped it, you know? And
You know,
I remember him finding out while he was in the hospital, a Black nurse came and tapped him on the shoulder and whispered to him, like, you know, don't worry about it. It was caught on tape. And so I know that was a sense of relief, thinking that you will get justice. However, you know, I can go on and on.
right, right, right. And see, the thing is now, a lot of people will say, well, why didn't they just stop? Or just like with George Floyd, why didn't he want to get in the car? But what a lot of people that haven't experienced what
Right,
our community has experienced
right,
is once you get in that car, you might not ever be seen again. And that is history. It is historic. And that's one of the things that we want people to understand. There is a major fear because of what has happened historically. And
right,
so it's not as easy to just say, yes, sir, officer, and to get in the car. Now, again, like I'm working with some police officers right now. I've developed a nonprofit that for it's called Off Road United, that gives money to fallen officers' families. So it's not, I am pro officer. I am pro having police officers. What I am against is abuse.
absolutely.
And and this has to stop. And so but the other thing that you said that's important, not only was your father not the same, your family was not the same
Not at
after
all.
that.
Still not.
And
They never will.
yes, yes.
Friends and
And
family.
as a child growing up with that, see,
Hmm.
I like you do a lot of work down on Skid Row. You've given food down on Skid Row. My son works a lot down on Skid Row. There are a lot of individuals that are on Skid Row and have had drug issues, not because of what they went through, but as a child. There are things that a lot of children never get over that suffer from PTSD that end up needing ongoing mental health. Let's
Right.
talk a little bit about that and your interest in working with young people
Sure.
or working with people in mental health.
You know, with the Rodney King Foundation, we're fortunate enough to hit all cities, as far as mental health and feeding the homeless. We work in Long Beach, we've worked in Altadena, we worked in like numerous amount of cities. Skid Row, I did a lot of that when I had a full-time job. And I still do it now, but we've done like different cities now, because you know, it has a domino effect. Like mental health has rippled, it has a domino effect. Everybody's affected by it. And it's like, you know,
Right.
I want to tell people we should really drop the judgment, because there's doctors on Skid Row, there's mothers, there's dentists, these are people that they were once in a better position than any of us. And
Right.
they just, we're all one situation away from being that person. And we have to realize that. And it's just my thought. I'm only
Mm-hmm.
because I chose not to give up. But we all have those days where we want to give up, but something in us keeps driving us. And helping these people is what drive me, because people are so judgmental and they're quick to judge. Well, why don't they just do that? It's mental. And we live in America. We should be able to help these people. But everywhere in the world, we're all in a position where we can have the domino effect and help someone, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. Well, also, when I was reading a little bit about Rodney King, and it said also that he was an activist. What are some of the activism that he was involved in?
Sure, as a kid, I didn't understand it. I hated it. Like, here we go again. But as an adult, as I got older, I realized that he fought for human lives, not just African American. Just so happened that it's African Americans that are being slaughtered. But he loved humanity, and he loved actually people getting along, because I
Mhm.
don't. It seems so hard because we can't, but it's simple to get along. It's very simple. So he would go. Tanisha Miller, who I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that case, but um, she was here. I believe it was I want to say up north, or no, I'm sorry, near San Diego. But she was sitting in her car. Her and her friend got a flat tire, and so
Mhm.
she had a gun on her lap because it was late at night. She was in the gas station, so her friend left for help, and they called the police. She was unconscious. They said she was unconscious. So of course, anybody they knocked on the window. Actually, they mammed on the window. She didn't answer. So they were like doing different things to wake her up. And so finally they bust the window and she grabbed the gun. She was scared. So they shot her car up like 20 rounds. But my thing is, any any person thinking logical would think, of course, she's going to react. She's not going to say, oh, someone's coming to save me. She was asleep. So it's like all these senseless lives taken, it affected him, because that could have easily been him, so
Right.
he didn't even want to be an activist. He just act out of his heart. And it's the same with me. I saw that as a kid and I want to help. I want to heal the world with my pain. And that's what he tried to do. And
Yes.
we all look at success differently. And I feel like my dad was successful because he touched so many lives with his pain, and he could have went a different direction, and yet he protested. He did it, of course, peacefully. He did things peacefully. He would go meet their families. He would, whatever he needed to do to help heal, that's what he did.
Mhm. Well, and the other thing too, when someone suffers something so traumatic,
Mhm.
PTSD can set in, and if it's not treated, I mean, your dad probably felt every time when something happened to someone, he relived what he went through.
He did.
And
Yeah.
now I don't care how much money someone can get after something like that, you know,
Right.
and people can have all kinds of judgments. Even
Right.
when I remember the time when he was on television and he said, "Can't we all just get along?" And there were some people that were angry about that, and there were people that said judgment about that. And why would he say that? Who are we or anybody, like you said, to judge or to be so critical? What
Right.
what what do you have to say about that? Because I'm sure you heard it.
Yes, I did. What's crazy? I have so many different emotions for the simple fact that he was given a script to read what he should say, and he ripped it up and spoke from his heart. And I feel like if we all did that, I can't judge you. If you're speaking from your heart, that's a good intention. You're a good intention. I can't judge you. I can only
Right.
follow your, and for me, those words were so profound. And he said that because there was old people being slaughtered in the street. There were people that spent their last dime for these businesses that their family created that were burned to the ground. He spoke for the people that weren't able to speak. And that's the type of person he was. He didn't really care about what people thought. A lot of African Americans were upset at him, which I understand that too. We're doing this for you, but yeah, you're trying to save the world. But he's trying to save the world because there was old people affected by this. There were people in that community that didn't have cars that were going to the grocery store that got slaughtered. So I understood that too. And I thought that that was really profound of him to say that, to risk his
Mhm,
everything. He did get a lot of
mhm.
crap saying that.
Yeah, yeah. I again, the long-term effect
Right.
um was just so I'm sure so profound. What are you doing now? What are some of the things that you're doing now with the foundation? First of all, when did you start it, and what led you to start the Rodney King Foundation?
I actually worked at an accounting firm in Glendale for 10 years, and I would go feed the homeless twice a month. I would use my own money. So I would like pack lunches, depending on my budget, anywhere from 50 to 100 to 200. And my dad would get so upset. He was still living. This was 2010. This was
Uh-huh.
2010. He would get so upset at me for using my own money. Like, why don't you start a foundation? Use me, use whatever you need, but start a foundation. Don't use your own money. So we would get into arguments about this all the time because he didn't want me using my own money. And so after he passed, I worked in the same building as Legal Zoom, and I spoke to someone and that went well. But then this was 2 months after he passed. So I went through a grieving process, and I've never grieved like this. So for me, it was like, I can't even describe it. I just had to stop everything and I would just go to work and come home, go to work and come home, nothing, and work out. Like that was my go-to. And I realized that's not going to save the world. That's not going to, if I dwell in my emotions, I'm going to spiral down, and that's not going to do
Hmm.
anything. And my dad was
Hmm.
like that. Even though he didn't have boys, he would talk to us like we were boys. So I had to give myself pep
Hmm.
talk. Come on, get it together, get it together. You can't do you sit here and cry. Okay, but what are you gonna do with that? How are you gonna change the world with those tears? People are suffering because you're silent. So I decided to ramp back up, get back into it. So I quit my job. I took out my 401k. Of course, that's gone now, but I took out my
Uh-huh.
401k, decided to go
That
for
was
it.
courage. That was
So
courage. Not
I'm so
everybody has the courage to do that.
yeah, it was a step. I was like, I can't see the staircase like MLK said, but I'm going for it. But
Yeah, yeah.
we 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 feed the homeless. We just did a warm days of blessings because here in California, even though we have the great weather, it was cold. It's cold at night. So we were able to provide um, um, s- beanies, gloves, hygiene packets, masks, sleeping bags, water, food, so that people, it's not much, but it's the world to somebody. And we've all been
Hmm.
cold. You know how it is when you're cold. So
Yeah.
we've done that. We do yearly turkey drives, we do yearly toy drives. Like I said, we give boxes of food. um we'll have another event in Watts this coming the 13th, for the anniversary of the 30th year for my dad's beating. We'll be giving out tennis shoes to the youth. We'll be giving out boxes of food as well, and hot food. So we'll have 3 food vendors there, giving out hot
Hmm.
food as well. I speak to the youth. I go to middle schools and speak to the youth about self-esteem. I've had meetings with the LAPD to try to build bridges. We're trying to talk to the new recruiters to introduce them to the culture, of Los Angeles, the culture of different people, because oftentimes recruiters are from different areas. And so, it's good to familiarize them with the culture so that they understand. Because oftentimes, like you spoke earlier, we have, I know for myself, I have a reaction to the police, and I have friends that are police officers. I have like 4 good friends. So that's where I get my faith in police, on those 4 good friends. But besides that, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, here we go again. And so that lets us work with the LAPD and the police department to try to figure out ways to get to know each other instead of judging each other, or a fight. We know we all have a flight or fight reaction when we get pulled over for the police. So I'm trying to get
Yeah.
them to understand that doesn't mean you're guilty. That doesn't mean you're a criminal. That just means I have a reaction because I'm feared for my life, not necessarily that I just committed a crime.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
trying to do a training where they understand people's body language, they understand people's nervous conditions, because it may seem like they're up to something, but in fact, they're just fearful of their life. So I think that's
Yes.
highly important. So we do
Yes.
different trainings, we want to get involved in more trainings, to just help the world understand each other so that we could move forward. Because I do
Hmm.
believe that we could get along. Like, I have faith in that. It's really little, but I do have faith.
Well, I was saying on my last call, just being here and watching all of my animals and the ducks and the guinea and all of them that people say won't get along, they all sleep together in the coop at night. Now, once you let them out of the coop, they get in their own little cliques, but they get
Yeah,
along and they still follow each other all here around the homestead. If one group moves, the others all move and they eat around each other, but they don't have to
right.
blend whether they want, if they don't want to. Now, I do have a duck that chases one of the hens, just one hen, and he's always trying to mount her. But
That is.
he does cross over. But the thing is, I was wondering, we have people on the line. Does anyone have any question for Laura or any
And
comments about?
we also have a
I, I'm,
program. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh,
go ahead, hon.
we also have a program called the I Am King Scholarship, and
Uh-huh.
that's like African American men. We started that 2 years ago. It's to highlight African American men in a positive way, because the media,
Mhm.
as we know on this call, the media portrays Black men as upset, angry, blah, 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 bad fathers. And I did research, and it's like, they're part of America, and they don't, looking back from when I was a kid to now, America doesn't, they put them in a different category. So at the foundation, we just wanted to highlight them and treat them out so that they can have a date with their kids. And that promotes self-esteem in kids. A positive father's presence promotes anything. Like, you feel unstoppable. You feel like you can do anything in the world. So that's what we do at the foundation. We have the I Am King Scholarship. So I encourage everybody to take a look.
Okay. Now, also, are you looking for collaborations since you're doing things nationally, maybe even internationally? Are you looking for organizations to collaborate with?
I am. I'm open. I'm very open-minded. I mean, like I said, my mission in life is to be empty of myself when I leave here. So whatever I can
Hmm.
do, I want to use my pain to push the world further, so that we could
Yes.
get so that we can be an example for all of our kids, Black, white, alien, fat, skinny. I think we all can make this place a better place. But if we, you know,
Hmm.
seriously, so that's, yeah.
Good, good, good. Well, now, have you gone after any grant funding? I cannot talk without talking about there's a grant for that.
You
Have you
know,
gone
if
after any?
I'm glad you pitched that. We are looking for someone to help us with that. I'm trying, but like I said, I just want to save the world. But the ins and outs, that part, I would love help. Like, I'm reading, I'm trying, but I would love any help, like, with that department.
Okay. Well, now, unless someone has any questions, I'm actually going to jump over and almost turn this into like a grant class also, because I want to show you some funding. And for
Sure.
those of you that are on, there's a lot of funding out there, and I just want to show you something, Laura.
Okay.
Let me just show my screen real quick. Anyone have any questions for Laura? None yet?
Wow.
Well, now, like, go ahead, Christina. Are you muted?
Good morning.
Hello,
Hi.
Oh,
Clarence?
hi. Yes.
Oh, okay. Go right ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say you might want to do this first because the screen's up already, and I can wait until I ask my question.
Okay, well, let me just show this real quick, and then Clarence, I see that you have your hand up. All I did, you guys, is I did a simple search. I'm in Google. I typed in grant, comma, African American fathers. Now, what I'm going to do to make sure that it pulls exactly what I'm looking for is I'm putting quotes around African American to lock those two words together. And I put 2021 so that I don't pull anything maybe from 2019 or further back. But like the Hogg Foundation awards 42,500. And see where it's talking about African Americans for healthy minds, empowering Black girls, African American fathers. See, there's
Oh,
simple searches
yeah.
that you can do that
Right.
would tie you to funding. The Kaiser Foundation. Um, so there's a lot of funding that's out there. Look at that. I guess it opened up on March 3rd, 2021. Isn't that
Oh,
date something? But but there are 175K social innovation grants.
Wow.
Okay. So there are simple searches, but also what you are doing, Lora, is you're empowering the homeless, you're empowering individuals, but also you have a real focus for African Americans. So even leadership development, for instance.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so for all of you, when you have a passion to make a difference for whatever your projects may be, these are just some simple ways for you to be able to look and see the funding that is available. The Advanced Leadership Initiative gets $1 million grant for African American leaders. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why I like to show this is because a lot of people just don't believe that the funding is there. But when I
Right.
can just get on Google and show you the reality,
Right.
then
That's
then
right.
um,
Yeah.
then that's what I like to do. So now I see that Christina just got up and walked away. So when she
Oh
comes
no, I'm
back,
right here.
oh,
I'm
there
sorry.
she is. All
I'm
right.
starting tea water. I'm starting tea water because my throat's dry. Sorry.
Okay.
Um,
Go right ahead.
Yeah, Laura, I just wanted to say that when this happened, we were just absolutely so upset. The country was collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And my son Josh, he was and my kids were around the age that you were at that time. And as
Okay.
watching it on TV with my children, telling them, this is still going on. We're not done. This is still going on. It was heartbreaking. I mean, we were so I just thinking about it, but it was just a wake-up call. So my disgust is that there was not more done systematically to deal with it, because of course we are very pro law enforcement too, but anti excessive force.
Right. Right.
Yes, because what happened in our family too, as Sherita knows, we lost my grandson's father, grew up fatherless because his dad was killed in an excessive force situation, was
Oh
shot
my
to
God.
death, and it was in San Diego, and it was just so tragic because the same officer that did that went on to get in these incidents, and he had previously had these incidents. So
Right.
so when this happened to George Floyd, all these years later, here we had your dad in 91, and then Isaac, our family member, died in the late 90s, and then here we are all these years later, and the
Right.
frustration is, why in the world is there
Yeah.
not these elements, the proper psychological vetting, the proper
Right.
bias training, the proper
Right.
everything that would be psychologically, and barriers put in place to help, even as officers are encountering a higher number in certain poverty-stricken areas, a higher number of crimes committed by African American youth,
Mhm.
because of the poverty situation, the way that their lives have gone, and the way, and the culture there's been a lot of, it's a poverty issue, it's a mental health,
Absolutely.
it's a family having been suppressed for so many generations and not had the proper funding to get home loans. I mean, it's a massive thing. So there needs to be a comprehensive addressing of the whole poverty issue, for one thing, but also within the within the actual departments, there has to be something that's going to, because here we have George Floyd. All these years later, we're seeing the same exact dynamic on the television, the same thing happening again. And
Right.
it's not a black or white. I mean, it's not, I mean, it happens more to Black people, but it's something that we all need to collectively, politically have the political will, and we need to come together and not just go together and get this done. Because, I mean, Isaac was white, but but the thing was, it wasn't that same officer went on to also do that, an excessive force again to an African American woman, and she was very injured. And so it's all of us need to deal with this. That's all I can say. And then secondly, I wanted to say on the mental health issue,
Mhm.
I am so glad you're working on this, and what you said about people in Skid Row being doctors and dentists. My mother was manic depressive, and she later in her life, as a young girl, she was completely seemed normal, but in her 40s, a lot of the time, when they're in their 40s and 50s, it sets in. And
Yep.
she she started to believe she was a prophet and had to go save the world. And so she would go out with her Bible in her knapsack and she'd go to the Grand Canyon and live in the cave, or go to Big Sur, or with the homeless people in Santa Barbara. And she was one of those people that you would walk by on the street, but she'd come home and go on her medication, and she'd be her normal person, I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
physiological, physical,
Right.
chemical imbalance, and it manifests in the strange behavior. And so that's another area that affects. This is why we can't be divided, because these issues, excessive force, of course, it hits the Black community much harder because of racial bias and generations of prejudice and horrible things that happen in this country. But all these issues need to be addressed by the majority of, and that these come from both political parties, because Republican and Democrat, within within both parties, there is a huge majority of people that want civil rights, that want mental health addressed. We just have to come together and do it. And it sounds so idealistic, but it's this division that is keeping it from happening, because the political will has to come from all sides. The political will and the work has to come from all sides.
You're absolutely right. And I agree with you on that. I won't talk long. I'll let someone else interject, but really quick, I wanted to touch on that. Another thing I'm in the process of doing, I want them to be able to evaluate the officers more often, not just when they're sworn in and leave it at that, because they are exposed to things as they go and do their job. You know, you change it, and I feel like they should be evaluated, because there's a lot to deal with too. You know, it's not easy to be an officer. I know I can't do it, so I commend them. However, I feel like they should be evaluated more often, because you know, you could be dealing with something and then you project that on the community.
Right, it's their trauma that they're dealing with in the job can set them off in a bad way. You're right.
Well, now, Clarence, you had your hand up.
Yes, first of all, good morning, ladies.
Good morning, Clarence.
Good morning.
Thank you, Sherita, for hosting such an important event. Lora, my condolences still goes out to you and your entire family. Christina, thank you for all your input. Thank God for you women. This is Women's Month, so let me commend you ladies for that. Also, you know, I thank God for creating a man such as Rodney King, because he was a strong man. Very few people could endure and survive the night of his beating. You know, we all seen it on film. I was in my 30s at that time. It was shocking to the world, but at the same time, it bear witness to all the other atrocities that we as Blacks went through, continue to go through and endure. We could see his change with his life after the incident, his traumatic brain injury, the difference of his social status, his mental state, all of that. But God made him such a strong man for those days, is that we saw the change, but it didn't change his character. It didn't change his spirit, and it didn't change his set of the kind of person that he was. Now, I look at some things differently than others. Me, in my mind, I still hold those cops accountable for his murder. Because if that wouldn't have happened that night, he could still be with us today. You know, and I got this from a niece of mine when her boyfriend was killed. It took him 5 years to die. You know, he recovered, but from those injuries, it shortened his lifespan. And if that wouldn't have never happened, he could possibly still be here today. So that's how I come up with this today. And I'm going to give you a question in a minute from that, because I think those cops should be held accountable, because there's no statute of limitation with murder. But once again, I just got to thank you for doing what you're doing today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I meant to
Oh,
not do that. I hit that wrong. Stop share. Sorry,
yes.
Clarence. I didn't mean to
Um,
break your train of
I
thought.
want you to eliminate a word from your vocabulary as try. You're not trying, you're doing the work.
You so much.
That is, I look at some of these words we use every day in our
You're right.
everyday communication that is not telling the whole story. For some people, it could be stumbling blocks, and for many, it could be hindering people from what they
Yes.
should be doing and who they could be. So you're not trying, you're doing the work. Our parents didn't use that word. They say be in the house by 5. You call a mechanic, your car be ready by 5. So you're doing the work.
Yeah.
You're not trying, you're doing the work. Throw that
Okay.
word.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you.
you can replace that word with regulate.
Mhm.
They call me the regulator because I've written that book. But back
Gotta
back
catch
to
Happy
that.
you.
now.
But back to you. I
Wait,
just
wait, wait,
think,
wait, Clarence. Wait, Clarence. Yeah, I
okay,
just heard something. Did you say that you wrote a book?
I've written several, but one of the books is Regulate the Manual that I've written. Um, um,
And it's about
it's about all of these issues that
Wow.
give many of us hard times. When I first was writing the book, me growing out of Watts, being a gang member from the beginning of the days of the Crips. And I wanted to write something about how to change those aspects from the duties, responsibilities of gangs. How do we get into going out here doing the work for an adversary
Right.
that
Right.
okay.
supplied us with all of the tools to do a work for them, and we think we're doing something
Right. Yeah. I
without
get it.
even
See,
knowing who
see,
we're
see, I
really.
stopped you then. I stopped you then, excuse me, and wanted to point out something because Laura, there is an opportunity for the two of you to collaborate.
I would
And
love
did you
that.
know that Grants would purchase his books
Oh,
so
that's
that now every time you go and speak, the two of you could be gifting the books to the young audiences that you speak to. See, so often our inventories are sitting on shelves, but they need to be in the hands of the young people that can be empowered. And that's what I mean about the collaborations that are possible, because we do it just because we know it needs to be done. Clarence, you skimmed over that, you've done it, you know that it needed to be done, but I just wanted to stop and point it out because we miss so many opportunities when we're operating segmented. There's fewer things that can be accomplished versus us working collaboratively together when we can empower. And especially now through this resource of Zoom and the fact that so many of us now are doing things virtually,
you're
you guys
absolutely
can be collaborating right now and reaching individuals. And just like I've got a box of books that were just shipped to me for our youth reading program, that was from a collaboration, and we're sending those books to Uganda. I don't want to skim over opportunities that can happen. And
and I
so
was this
I
with you guys.
go right ahead, darling.
It's so funny, Clarence. You're from Watts. Well, I was baptized there when I was 14. That's one of the things that saved my life. So Watts is dear to my heart. Not only that, me and my team just did an event Wednesday for the anniversary of the 3rd at the Watts Empowerment Center. We gave out
I
over
I
400.
saw that on
Yeah,
Facebook.
we did. So Watts is dear to my
Good,
heart. That's where we'll be again on Saturday at Morning Star, where I was baptized, and we'll be giving out shoes
good.
and things like that. So I just want to touch on that.
Okay, well,
And
yes, let's connect.
go right ahead.
Um, but getting back to your father, um, and I gotta send a shout out to Bobby Buck for inviting me to this Zoom meeting, because we cannot forget what happened to your father. He is the cornerstone of many of the atrocities that happened to us, because like you said earlier in the video, this is like the Jackie Robinson of these kind of atrocities getting out. you
Mhm.
know. So I want to commend you for your continued work. Let's make sure I'll give you my number before the Zoom meeting is up. I can give
Okay.
it to you on the Zoom.
Okay.
So you get a pen ready, and when Sherita bring me back in, once again, I commend you. Christine, I commend you because of your story
I agree.
coming from Oregon, right?
Yes, from Oregon.
Yes.
Mhm.
I
So,
agree.
Mhm.
this is a national epidemic,
Absolutely.
pandemic, can we call
Yes.
it that,
Yeah.
of what's happening to
Yes.
us
Right.
as
Yes.
a people. We are the spearhead of the oppressions, of the profiles, of the discrimination, of the racial
Mhm.
violence, the hatred.
Mhm.
You know, I'm going to point this out because I look at things from different angles sometimes. Looking at what happened to your dad, remembering that video, I watched a movie called The 24th last night, 1917, an all black infantry unit down in Houston, Texas. 19 were executed because of the racial violence. And then when I look at the insurrection on the nation's capital, some of these police and and we have people in our society with those mindsets of racism. They don't understand that God, when he created this heaven and earth, he created abundantly for all of us. But
Absolutely.
some people refuse to leave the historical primitive ways of their nature. You
Yeah.
can educate a primitive person, give them a great job, give them a great life, and all the good things, cars, houses, and homes. But with all that, they're still not satisfied, some people. So
Absolutely.
we just have to understand that, respect it on a certain level, and make sure we recognize and deal with them accordingly when we have to, because we do have the right to stand in
Absolutely.
self-defense. So God bless you. God
Thank you.
keep you
Yeah.
strong.
Appreciate that. So
Make sure we trade numbers and you call me. I'll be more
absolutely.
than glad to come out and volunteer to help you at any time. And
Oh,
Sherita, thank you once
Well,
again for
Can I say,
bringing this to light, something we cannot forget.
yes. Go right ahead. Go right ahead, Laura.
Oh
this
no,
is
I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, I was
Okay.
gonna
this
Well,
is
well, what I
Patricia.
wanted to say, what I wanted to say. Oh, Patricia, I'm going to let you step right in just one moment, dear. I'm sorry. You guys see the picture on the screen, right?
Yes.
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 And I'm not sure who this artist is, and I can't tell if my pictures are also covering it of all of us. But can you see the whole picture? Because on my screen, my menus are in the way.
We can see, I can see it.
I can see the whole picture.
Okay. Well,
That's powerful.
see,
Mhm.
Christina, listening to you, listening to Clarence, and Laura, of course, the reason why we're here is what you're doing now and your father. What we have to remember, and I don't know who did this cartoon, but it is such a great visual. People will say, well, why do people riot, or what? And Martin Luther King said it best than anything that I've heard. He said a riot is the voice, riots are the actions of the voiceless.
That's right.
And so now we can say that everything is equal now, that there's equality, but if you look at the picture on the left, if you are still short, even if you're giving a box the same size at the same height as everyone else, but you're still short,
Right.
it's not equal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to deal with the inequities that have historically been happening in this country with African Americans and the Black and Brown people. And so the more that we can show others, see, like Christina, with yourself, yes, you've experienced some things, but a lot of times with the love that you have and the love that you and I have for each other, there's absolutely no way that even if you put on my shoes, that walking in them is the same, you know. And so what people have to understand, the reason why we continuously talk about it, the reason why we talk about bridging the gap and we need more race relations and cultural awareness training and that kind of thing, is if we stop talking about it, then yes, Christina, you will know, because you continuously are showing love and working with individuals like myself. You and I work together, you're constantly around us, but there are some others that are not. And so if we do not keep yelling it from the mountaintops about the inequality, and so that we can start working on that and continue to work on that, then it will never change. And so I just wanted to show this picture because it's such a great visual. Patricia, step right in, my dear.
Well, great. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And
Good morning.
it's a
Good morning.
powerful,
Thank you for coming on.
this is a powerful Zoom. And I want to thank Bobby Buck, one of my associates, for actually informing me about this Zoom. And it was late when I got it, but I see so much that we can do. Several points. One, I work with United Black Wall Streets of America. We are preparing for the centennial, the 100th anniversary to commemorate the massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's May 31st and June 1st this year. Do a comparison. When you talk about when people get angry, and as the sister Dr. King said, that the riot is the voice of the voiceless. But look what they did to us in the massacre at Black Wall Street. And so, and Bobby getting us together, and his infinite wisdom, I say Bobby is really great at collaboration and getting people together. Seeing that we want to do a comparative study of what happened at Black Wall Street, but what happened in the riot, or I should say the insurrection, in Los Angeles. So that'll be a whole year. So we definitely want to, partner with you and bringing forth that. And then second, we work with the Fatherhood Initiative in several different communities, and there are funds there for that fatherhood movement. So, and we work with several other organizations as well, that we know that we can definitely collaborate on funding. So we wanna definitely do that. And I know Bobby will get us together on that. But lastly, I want to say that when we think about what happened with Rodney King, of course, I was aware of that, okay? What happened then, we all saw the video. It was 30 years ago, but we all saw that video. And being, different age groups, you had to process that differently. But as I grew, understood, but also as I went to various universities and especially in my postdoctorate program, let me tell you something. We really have to understand that the things that we talk about, they don't just happen. We are socially engineered. And finding out that there was a social engineering process of keeping Blacks confined in LA, keeping them away from the affluent area, because that's what LA was supposed to be. And just many of the things that had been socially engineered with the police force, and that was the role of the police force. It came out of the slave catchers, and they're there to protect property. And then, so the property of others, but and to control property. We forget that Black people are chattel property and still are seen as property. And boy, you better stay in your place or something other. But there's so much to this process. I look forward to working with you all. And again, I want to thank Bobby Buck for reaching out to our group and bringing us into this. Thank you.
Oh, thank you
Good,
guys.
good. And thank you, Bob, because man, you were doing your due diligence. But let me talk to you a little bit about some things that happens as far as collaboration. Do you know that following the Rodney King riots, what we were calling them at the time, I was a part of, along with the African American Unity Center, Danny Bakewell's The Brotherhood Crusade. We put together a collaboration of about 50 organizations for the Rebuild LA project. And we got about $2 million in grant funding for each group, that from gang intervention programs to Mothers in Action with Brenda, health and wellness organizations, child care centers, all of the groups that were needed in order to make a collective unity of empowerment and strengthening following the Rodney King riots. We got a major funding for that. And we were right there on 54th and Vermont at the time for the African American Unity Center. Prior to that, at the night of the riots, The night that the riot started, I was a director at the Weingart YMCA right there on 99th in Vermont. For those of you that are in LA, you know exactly the YMCA. And when the fire started down there at Florence and Normandy, the fires were so extreme that from those fires all the way up Vermont, our cars were covered right there in the parking lot, right there at Century in Vermont. I was sharing this with you, Laura, that I took home some of the girls that were there at the Y, and they went home with me because of the fires that were going on. A lot of the members at the YMCA wouldn't leave because that YMCA was a safe haven for people. Even though, if you remember, there was a Church's Chicken right there on the corner that was burning. And we had to go out and tell some of our young YMCA boys, put those boxes of chicken down. We are not going to allow you guys to do this. Miss Herring, they're going to burn up anyway. You are stealing, because you've got to hold who you are and the integrity of who you are, no matter what is going on.
Very
so
true.
I'm saying all that to say, you guys, that all of this is very fresh in my mind. Though I'm here in the country right now, I was on that corner on 99th in Vermont the night that happened. And like I was saying, Laura, and I'm surprised, I'm really surprised they're not on right now. Bobby Green, who was the gentleman that, the young man that went there, and when that happened with Reginald Denny, he was the guy that went and picked him up and got him to the hospital that evening. So and they're very interested in talking with you and making full circle of how we can make this an even more positive outcome. Literally, a lot of times we'll say turning lemons into lemonade. You guys, we've got to stop being reactive when something happens and stay consistently proactive in making sure that equity, that there's equity that happens, that organizations are collaborating, and so that we can stop the Rodney Kings, the George Floyds, the Breonna Taylors, and we can go on and on and on. All the way back, I'm working with an organization that they're telling the TRM Howard story that most of us don't know about. As a civil rights leader he was, and it was because of him that Mamie Till went on and legally went after the individuals that did that to Emmett Till. You guys, the time is now to make sure that we all are treated fairly. Everyone. Clarence, you got something to say, sir? Come on with it.
Yes, you bringing up the 1992 riots. I like to share something with you that nobody probably never heard that was happening during the 1992 riots. I was incarcerated at that time when the riots went down. I was stationed at locked up at Peter Pitcher's Honor Ranch South, and they have like the outside dorms.
Okay.
And so we're in the day room, and when the riot started because of Rodney King, the next thing you know, that center, that incarceration place went off. Now, leading the rebellion in there was the Latinos. They did more than actually the brothers. I mean, they went wild. They running through with sheets on fire, jumping on guards in that place. It was out of control for 2 or 3 hours. And then after a couple of hours, you start seeing these county jail buses coming. I mean, bus loads, and they call those riot sheriff bulls. They're full of what they call these bulls, police cars, buses full of sheriffs. They were in riot gear. They coming with them concussion grenades. They had the body armor, the shields, and they taking the bags one bag at a time. And every bag they took, they was on that loud horn. They said, if you're not laying face down on your mattress with your hands behind your back crossed, we're gonna mess you up. I do my best to eliminate profanity from my mouth because it's a gateway to all the evils that's out here. It sets the mindset, and we need to speak more on profanity, where it come from. But the Latinos did more in that jail than the brothers. don't get me wrong now, the brothers was involved too. And once they got the jail under control, they started locking us up on chains, and they started switching prisoners. They started shipping us down to the LA County jail. And the guys that was in the LA County jail, they shipped them out there to change the environment and to put you in 2 or 4-man cells. And every busload that arrived at the county jail, they had those bulls right there waiting when you got off the bus. They let us know that they heard what happened down there. They're not going to tolerate it at that location downtown. This was before the Twin Towers was built. And I tell you, so that's a story that I wanted to share with you of something that happened behind the beating of your dad that you probably never heard of or knew about.
Wow.
So, the jails even went off. I when it went, it's happening on TV, we was in the day room and we started seeing the riots, and immediately they cut the TVs off throughout Peter Pitcher South. And after that, it was chaos and havoc.
Lora, now before I forget, how I'm coming back to you, Christina. How can they reach you? Anyone that will see the video later on live stream right now, how can you be reached?
Sure, we have a website. It's rodneyking.org, rodneyking.org, and also social media. I'll give you guys my personal Facebook page is Lora Dene King, and that's LoraDene, last name King, King. And my personal Instagram is Lora, Lora _King, King RKF. And the Rodney King Instagram is official Rodney King. So yeah, so my personal is LoRa _ King RKF, and then the Rodney King one is official Rodney King. So yeah, those are all that's where to find me. And my email, you can email my personal email. It's Lora, Lora @rodneyking.org. So it's Lora @rodneyking.org. That's my personal email.
Okay. And also we do have the chat there. I see that Bobby, you've written a lot in there. Bobby says he's formerly homeless resident of Skid Row community here in Los Angeles. I'm working on a positive movement called Action, which means acquiring causes to intertwine our nations. And by doing so, I'm creating an independent advertising promotional network to promote all individuals and organizations doing positive action within the communities. And he goes on. So you guys, I'm going to make sure that when I send you the recap, that I'm going to also copy the chat into it. Lora, I will provide your information, but I don't know if there's anything also that you want to put in the chat. But Clarence, with you talking about that, as far as you were locked up at the time, you guys following the Rodney King riots, and I just want to say this because a lot of people aren't aware. I was working with the men at Chino Prison, and I was helping providing positive and outreach and leadership development and connecting them to programs and services for when they got out of prison. And during that time, I was also linking them to services that best fit who they were. So I did a survey asking how many of them, when did they start going to prison? How old were they when their father or mother or uncle or someone adult that they first knew went to prison? Because you guys, I found this report called From Welfare State to Prison State. I didn't share that with the guys until after I did this survey. Now, the chaplain said, Sherita, all these questions that are on here, these guys aren't going to answer these questions. Not only did they answer the questions, they attached 5, 6, and 7 pages. You guys, I was reading the information and in tears. But what I found out, I had about 42 guys in my class. Get this. They were between 1968 and 1972. They were between the ages of 5, 8, 9 years old. Wow. Now, when they started talking, and when they answered those surveys, they started saying that, you know, that their fathers, their first, that their recollection of someone going to prison was 1973, 1971. Well, around that same time in 1968, 69, the president said the prisons were actually, there were prisons across the United States that were sitting empty. And so what they were going to do was combine prisons and tear down prisons. And the president said, no, instead of doing that, build more prisons and cut community programs. You guys, it's in that report. Okay. By 1973, 1974, instead of those prisons being half empty, they were full, and they were building new prisons by 1975.
Yeah.
So what I did is I showed those to the guys, and I said, it is designed for you to be here at this time.
Exactly.
Right.
So what we have to do, and that's why we do these forums, we've got to start educating more. The more that we can also work with our children about cultural awareness, race relations, then as they become the adults and the police officers and those that are working in community, they will have a different mindset. So Laura, what were you going to say, my dear?
I was going to say a few things. So, I mean, I'm willing to do a part 2 of this, because like I'm a little emotional, because I'm like happy about this. This was amazing. This helped me so much. But I got to run because I work at the Body Bar here in California.
Oh, yes.
Yes. My best friend owns a spa. It's called the Body Bar. So if you guys are here today, swing by, come by our site. We'd love to handle you. I'm actually a body sculpting technician there, and I have a client at like 10:30. So luckily I'm like 2 minutes away. But I also wanted to add, and you know, I've done tons of interviews last year, and one of the main things I said to the media and everybody is, speaking of riots, why isn't lives, not just all lives, but right now it's African American lives, why the state of emergency, like they say when people are burning things down, this is a state of emergency, they call it all this, why isn't a Black man's life a state of emergency? And I propose that, I'm going to keep proposing it until it becomes effective, because it's crazy that, you know, material things burning down is more important. That brings in the, you know, the top dogs of the military, but yet a Black man's life is not. That's crazy to me, you know. So I just wanted to say that before I forget. But also, my dad, you know, one of the reasons I do what I do is because my dad, and he said this till he died, he wasn't the first Rodney King, you know. And so it's sad, we shouldn't be here. So until he's not, until we matter, I'm gonna do this forever until God forbid. And it's like I watched my dad do this behind the scenes. The media didn't show who he really was, so that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna do that forever, because he would pay money to send me to leadership camps, to Black African American, and things that were different walks of life, so that I could do what I'm doing. And it's only the beginning, you know. This, as I get more and more, as I watch things happen more and more, and it becomes more painful, I'm gonna keep going. So I would love to collaborate. I would love to change the world. You know, I feel like we're all puzzle pieces, whether we're Black, white, just so happen we are suffering. So we have to help each other. And that's pretty much it.
Can I say something
Well,
really
we
quick?
definitely can do a part 2, and we can talk further. We can even start having collaborative meetings. Go ahead, Christina, so that then we can.
I just wanted to say, Laura, thank you so much for coming and telling my part of the story. I'm not inferring. I believe that there's a horrible discrepancy, and as Sherita knows, I feel that, of course, white people go through these things, but it's disproportionately always been the other way. But there's also, in this rioting, I want to, in the part 2, be able to talk about the fact that there's displaced anger. It hits people, like it hits Black and white businesses of poverty stricken, like it just hits people and takes their livelihoods away. And so it's the same, and that is equated with Reginald Denny. It's the same thing, that was misplaced anger. So, and those become barriers to, my story just makes me empathetic, because I know what it's like to watch your, you know, lose a loved one and watch your grandchild grow up fatherless. That just gives me empathy. It doesn't make my life easy, you know.
Right. And I commend you in any walks of life that are not African American for standing up for us. And that's one of the reasons we're in a great position right now. We've been able to watch front hand. Different nationalities are fed up at this point. Before, we were the only ones, so we were considered like, but now you guys are like, hey, this is enough. That's because you guys have national TV. Kids are watching George Floyd, you know, so now you're forced to explain this to your kids, which takes their innocence. So I commend you. I commend you for walking with us, because we are our brothers and sisters, you know, so I commend you for speaking up for us.
Remember, we've always been there, that our parents and grandparents, they may have always been, my great-grandpa injured in the Civil War fighting for the Black people to be free. So it's there's generations. So sometimes just remember, we've always been with you. We've always been, there's an element that has, so we can't separate the Black and white people, because there's huge elements that always have been.
Right. Thank you so much, Christine.
And thank you. And guys, we will, Laura, you and I will be speaking. We will have to have a part 2 and be able to talk more about collaborations. So I want to thank you so much for being on. And again, where can they reach you?
RodneyKing.org is the site. So come, you know, share your ideas. We'd love to hear from you. Newsletters, donations, anything, any ideas. We're very open. We're always doing things. Like we're having an event this Saturday in Watts, giving out food, hot food and boxes, tennis shoes to the youth. I'm trying to raise funding so I can give out more, but you know, we're just constantly working, trying to make this thing, you know.
Will raise funding to give out more.
We're working on changing this thing. Excuse me.
Clarence, we heard you. We heard you.
Yes, you're working on. You're working on it.
Yes. And so again, I want to thank all of you. We had so many people also that have registered because they want to get the recording. I want to thank those of you that are glancing at us on Facebook. Laura, thank you for being who you are, because it could have been so different as far as you going on and moving forward, having the courage to go on and move forward with your foundation, pull your money and say, look, I'm just going to do this. That's courage. There's a lot of people that have a fear of stepping, like you said, and not seeing where their next steps are going. So I commend you. Christina, thank you for being on, because the fact that you're here, there's a lot of people that might feel the same way, but don't have the courage. And they know this is being recorded. They know that this is on Facebook. Mr. Bobby Buck, I thank you for having Patricia and Clarence come on. Clarence, I can't wait I want to get your book. And if you got 2, we probably need to be we need to be interviewing you. This is about empowering. It's about educating. And Mr. Bobby Buck, again, thank you, sir, for being so supportive. Laura, dear, I look forward. You and I haven't met in person yet, but I look forward to it. I look forward to us having a part 2.
Can I say one last thing?
How do we contact you, Sherita? How do we contact you?
I'm at the Philanthropy Alliance Foundation. I will also place that in the chat, but my organization is philanthropyalliance.org, philanthropyalliance.org. And that word philanthropy, I just want to say this, you guys, all of you are philanthropists in what you're doing in community. Bobby, and what you're doing in bringing people together. Christina, and what you're doing and looking out for others. Laura, definitely in what you're doing as far as the Rodney King Foundation. And if you do not have philanthropy in your bio, somewhere on your Facebook, on your social media, on your websites, you are a philanthropist. And a lot of times people don't wear that title because they think that it is only for someone like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. No, philanthropy is giving, it's caring, it's making a difference. So if nothing else from today, start wearing that title. And again, Laura, I know that you have your appointment coming up in 15 minutes. Thank you again for being on. God bless you and your family.
Sherita, I just wanted to add one thing that I mirrored after my dad, and it's true. You know, I try not to operate out of my ego, and I try to operate inside of our ancestors' spirit and their walk and what they went through. So it's like, it's only right for me. I owe that to them. There was so many of our people that couldn't even speak. And so for me to even use my voice, for me to even use anything, I owe that to them. And that's how my dad felt. He felt like, even though the beating, he was supposed to die that night. Like, he really was. And it was a proven fact. But our ancestors went through way more than that. And for him to have that drive, and for me as a kid to watch him and like realize he said that, who am I to not walk in that truth? And so
Yes.
I'm just happy to be here, and I can't wait to
Lora,
connect.
Well, I thank you. I thank you
Lora,
all
with
so
much
much.
respect,
And let me
I
also
have to
say that,
disagree with you on that. He wasn't supposed to die tonight. Don't let nobody put that in your mind, and whoever put it, get out, because God has plans that we know nothing
he has
about.
control.
Because if he was
Yes,
supposed to, he would have.
You're
would.
right.
He was not
Yes.
supposed to die that
And
night. No, he wasn't.
Right.
You're
The enemy
thank you so
wanted
much,
him
Karen.
to.
Yeah, stop.
But
We got to stop allowing this system to dictate our
Right.
thoughts and choices.
well,
That is so
well,
true.
I want to thank all of you again. And one last thing, I purposely did not show the video, even though for 81 seconds he was beaten with the billy club 56 to 58 times. But I did not want to we all have seen that. We all understand that, and that's why we're here today. So that's why I did not show the video. And I just wanted to focus on, speak on what happened, but now speak on what will take place from this podcast today forward. So Lora, again, I want to thank you for being on. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and this will continue. We'll be back. Part 2. Lora, thank you. Go get to your client, dear.
Okay, thank you, Sherita. Bye, you guys. Nice meeting you guys. To be
Nice
continued.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace.